I just wonder if the word should actually be, is this an excuse that Jagmeet Singh could use?
That's sneaky guy Jagmeet Singh. Welcome back to Moose and Loose here. We've got a panel talking about this situation, the Donald Trump tariff situation, which is directly linked to Jagmeet Singh giving his support to Justin Trudeau or Mark Carney or whoever to keep them in power all the way until October. This really seems like this may be happening. I mean, we heard the words out of Jagmeet's mouth yesterday. He was saying the Liberals haven't talked to him yet, but if they came forward with a plan to save the workers, to help the workers, to help the Canadians who need help, the man is flip-flopping. Let's jump into this. Starting off, check out this clip here on CBC. It says, look how excited former Trudeau advisor Tyler Meredith gets on CBC about collecting potential tariffs and redistributing all that revenue to his favorite pet projects. He's almost foaming at the mouth talking about this.
Going to be much harder. And let's also remember, I think, which is maybe a lot of people don't understand, we're going to have as a government tariffs, because if we respond on a dollar for dollar basis, it means we're taxing the imports that come back across the border towards us, which means if we're doing this on a dollar for dollar basis and it applies to all goods and services, the government of Canada could record potentially $130 billion in revenues next year, which would wipe out the deficit and would I think create an interesting question of how you recycle that in the economy. Do you use tax cuts? Do you use targeted industrial supports in order to help businesses in an emergency? Do you help businesses with retooling? Do you want to think about, extended employment insurance program supports for training? There's a whole range of things you can do, but I think
yeah, we know what you're going to do. You're going to send it to Uganda or Democratic Republic of Congo for gender-sensitive climate solar farming techniques. They're not going to recycle this back to the people. This is going to destroy Canadian jobs across the country, and they know it. And they're just going to reap the rewards and not give a crap about Canadians.
I think what's different in this case from any other recession is that the government is going to have money.
Insanity. The Americans are engaged in a war of wits with an unarmed opponent. Leaderless unarmed opponent. Somebody should tell them to look at the other side of the ledger. Next up, this one from Table Salt. It says, I actually feel like 25% tariffs on Canada mixed with the absolute cluster state that Canada is in would be enough to topple Canada as a nation. I've never ever thought about that before about this country. We are teetering. It does seem like we are in a pretty precarious place in Canada right now. I think it's more of a plummet than a teeter. Canada faces several crises: immigration, housing, taxes, tariffs, and sovereignty. Collapse is a possibility. Next up, we got Kate Harrison on here. She's always dropping truth bombs on CBC.
So, Kate, these are big things, right? You know, copper fastening your election from foreign interference and responding to a tariff threat that puts you in a recession like we haven't seen since 2008. Singh sort of suggested if everyone comes together, like during COVID, there might be a path. I don't know if that's going to happen. Does any of this change the calibration of the thinking of the opposition parties?
I don't think it should. I think, if anything, it's a rationale to have an election and at a minimum recall Parliament to discuss these things. Like, we are talking about serious issues facing Canada right now in terms of this tariff threat.
Yeah, but that won't benefit the Liberals, so that's why they won't do it. It's always about the Liberals and not about Canadians. Unfortunately,
there was just before Christmas seemingly consensus around getting a plan together for the border. Some of that work didn't happen because of prorogation. So we should be talking about all of these things right now in Parliament and not on the sidelines having conversations about what Canada's response might be. I don't think it's responsible for Jagmeet Singh to suggest that, a backroom conversation with political leaders is a better way to handle these conversations around Canada's response to tariffs than having this debate openly in Parliament. And for somebody to be a man of the people, self-proclaimed, he seems very keen to cut deals with the Liberals on the periphery of Parliament rather than actually bring this forward to the floor for discussion. So I don't think it's a responsible proposal from him to try and do something on the outskirts of Parliament. We should be reconvening Parliament, having these conversations openly, right, and for Canadians to decide and have a say in our best path forward.
Flip-flop saying it's not looking promising. Jagmeet is the kind of guy who would rather have a sneaky Weasley deal in the background, secret conversations versus, as she said, having it open on the floor of the House of Commons. Why does this feel like another foreign interference inquiry where the ones getting blamed the most weren't even running the country at the time? Because Liberals only know how to point blame at other people. Jumping in on this panel on CTV here, they're talking about the Donald Trump tariffs. The Liberals are proposing a big stimulus package like what happened with the World event a couple years ago. Will Jagmeet go against his own word? Doesn't matter which leader is running the Liberal government, he will vote to take down the government. Will he go against those words, or will he support the Liberals once again.
Do you think the possibility of this response package in part could, convince Jagmeet Singh, for example, to back off this, the degree to which he said, I will bring the government down no matter what? Even, I don't know how much to read into what he said today, but it wasn't as unequivocal as he was even a week ago.
Well said. And I have read the exact same thing into his statement. Now, he is being the adult in the room saying, look, let's come together and discuss what's possible in terms of a response. I think the government is doing it right. I mean, Chrystia Freeland saying, yeah, let's publish our reaction when we don't even know what will or will not happen on Saturday. That's negotiating against yourself. So I think that's ill-advised. But I think that Singh is opening the door, at least for himself, to be a little bit more flexible than he was when he was saying, the minute I get a chance, I'm going to bring them down. The real question is, where are we going to be 6 weeks from now? And that's the question to which nobody knows the answer, because we don't even know what's going to happen, as I say, on Saturday. And are we going to be punted forward to the April 1st deadline that was in the documents that were published by the U.S. government? Or, as the spokesperson was saying today, are we still looking at February 1st? Stay tuned, but I think that right now Canada is smart to keep its powder dry, not to overreact, to know that we do have the ability to respond. But we're not going to win a trade war against the United States. It's a question of numbers. So we've got to do this very strategically, make sure that they understand that the brunt of the burden is going to be borne by American consumers. That's what will hurt Trump politically.
So I should note here, I've been getting some inside information from a lot of you guys, and up until this situation with Jagmeet flip-flopping and potentially supporting the Liberals once again, it seemed very much our election was going to be the beginning of May. The reason I suspect this is because one of you, I won't say which province, but one of you said that one of your friends has a building to rent out, and Elections Canada contacted this person to rent the building out for May. So it's quite obvious why they would want to rent out the building for the election, but maybe this isn't the case anymore.
For all intents and purposes, that feels, as it has so far, facts to convince Donald Trump, Lisa, not to do this. And there is some sort of response required that needs to go through Parliament. How do you see that playing out politically?
I can't believe we're talking about this, Bashi. We're in this mess because of the fact that the Prime Minister prorogued Parliament, knowing that we were going to be put in a position with the President Trump imposing tariffs. Yet he still prorogued Parliament. I mean, they should have went back to Parliament yesterday. They should be in there discussing this legislation, being able to deal with it. They should have ran their Liberal leadership at the same time. But they didn't do that. They chose to put us into a spin cycle between now and March 9, when they have chosen their leader. And then from there, I don't know where they're going to go. I mean, they could recall Parliament, I suppose. That's one of the things that the Conservatives have said, bring back Parliament and talk about the package now. But I'm going to go back to your question to Tom, which is I totally read into Jagmeet Singh's statement that he's giving himself some room to come to a deal with the next Liberal leader. No.
See, it's not just me speculating here. I mean, you got Tom Mulcair. She's saying it as well. We're all reading exactly the same book here that Jagmeet Singh is going to flip-flop.
Question about it. And I'm going to say there are going to be some really ticked off people in this country who are kind of counting on having a general election. And I'm not just saying only Conservatives. I'm talking about general public who are saying, let's turn the page, let's move on, let's get somebody in there who's going to negotiate it with respect to the President Trump and move on with the deal instead of having an old, tired, recycled Liberal government in play.
Now, you might be wondering, why would Jagmeet want to support the Liberals again and keep them in power? What does he get from that? Well, if you look at the recent polls I showed, I think 2 days ago, they had that poll between Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland. You could see if Chrystia Freeland was the leader of the Liberals, it was more of the same polling numbers, NDP sitting around 19%. But once you put Mark Carney in there, it dropped down to 12 or 13%. It was an immediate 6 or 7% drop. So Jagmeet Singh is probably realizing he needs to change his tune a bit. And if he supports Carney, it maybe buys him more time to try to sway voters with some other tactic. That's the only thing I can think of here, because the other members of the NDP caucus who already grilled Jagmeet Singh on continually to support Trudeau, they might go back on this too if it means trying to win their seats, keep their seats. Because they're all worried about that. Jagmeet got his pension now, so now his self-serving is done. So if Jagmeet flip-flops, it's likely because a lot of the caucus is saying, hey, why don't we delay this? Because we got to figure out a way to get Canadians back on our side. Because according to that poll, they would slip not only that 7 or whatever percent, but a few more percentages above that, which they're polling about 20-something% earlier. That last one showed them at 13%. So they're going to lose their seats. They'd rather keep the Liberals in power and try to get those seats back versus having an election and losing their jobs immediately.
Do you think there is any political price to pay, Brian, for Jagmeet Singh if he does change his position after being so unequivocal? I mean, I get it. It's against the backdrop of kind of like a massive event that would be very impactful. But even a week ago when I was in Washington on the night of the inauguration, I asked him on the record, are you still going to do this at the first available opportunity? His response was, yeah, thanks for allowing me to go back on the record. I definitely will bring the government down at the earliest possible.
So I have that clip. Let's just look at it.
You had said prior to Christmas that no matter what, at the earliest possible availability, that you would vote to bring the government down, that you would offer a vote of no confidence in the government. Is that still the case? Do you plan on doing that no matter what the economic circumstances, what Trump is doing, all the extenuating things?
Yeah, I've been really clear, and I remain clear, and I appreciate the opportunity to repeat it. We will be voting to bring down the government at the earliest opportunity. There will be an election.
Yeah, somehow I don't believe the guy. You really believe that WF liar? Come on, man. He's in Carney's back pocket. So there we have it. Jagmeet Singh saying he's going to take down the government. I think he's leaning to keep the government in power.
I think there's potential ramifications for sure. There's also potential ramifications for the NDP going into an election where they stand in the polls currently, right? So I think there's a lot for them to weigh. Now, obviously, Jagmeet Singh has confirmed yet again with you and has said publicly pretty forcefully that he would bring down the government as soon as he possibly could. When you asked Tom the question, would this be enough to convince Jagmeet Singh? I just wonder if the word should actually be, is this an excuse that Jagmeet Singh could use, right? Is this enough for him to be able to change the mind of maybe his caucus supporters and to some extent Canadians to say, oh, look, of course, I certainly want to bring the government down, but these are circumstances that require that I rethink things. So that's possible. Frankly, to be fair to him, though, it could also be possible that he is still very clear in his mind going to vote down the government at the first opportunity, but wants to show that it's not just political. He's willing to think it through and listen to people and sort of weigh all options, and then maybe he'll ultimately say he comes to the same conclusion. So that certainly would make sense for him to do as well. But I think at the end of the day, with what Lisa said, I don't disagree with. I sort of maybe put the emphasis in different spots. Like, had the prime minister decided he was going to do what he ultimately did, what Tom had been predicting for forever earlier, then certainly we wouldn't necessarily be in this. Tom, you said before Christmas, though, before the holiday season, though, so you just missed it. But nevertheless, had it been earlier, the party itself would have had more time, which I'm sure the party would have liked. And of course, we wouldn't find ourselves in the midst of potentially having the tariffs thrusted upon us.
Something to think about. Before Trudeau resigned, Jagmeet was polling higher than he is now. Once Trudeau said he's going to step down, Jagmeet's numbers went up. Once Mark Carney threw his hat in the ring here, Jagmeet and the NDP's numbers have plummeted. So they're probably scrambling to try to figure out what to do to keep their own jobs. So we're seeing that here. I mean, this one's been smoothed out, but basically if you look at the polling here, Trudeau resigns. And Trudeau was sliding before he resigned. He resigned down here. Jagmeet NDP were still going up a bit after Carney threw his hat in the ring, and basically there was no Trudeau running the Liberals anymore. The numbers have gone up, but you can see the NDPs have just tanked.
I mean, both Rob and Tom had been predicting it for a long while. To be fair, Benzie, I got a question for you on this too. I mean, look, Jagmeet Singh didn't just say I'm open to it. Like he also made the point that he would want to ensure, for example, that any aid was tied to keeping Canadian jobs, like, avoid a lot of the mistakes, for example, of what happened during COVID or stuff that was overlooked, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was having to act quickly. And he also said that there have been no overtures from the federal government to opposition leaders to kind of brief them on where things sit and what the response is. So I guess all of that is, part and parcel of what to take into consideration.
Well, exactly, Bashi. And we have this weird when Jagmeet was saying that earlier, and I was watching it at Queen's Park as we were waiting for Doug Ford to visit the lieutenant governor. To announce the election that will launch tomorrow in Ontario, I was struck by how Jagmeet was saying was really sounding like he was finding his way to this. And it's like the Trump tariffs are, just as the Trump tariffs are being used as an excuse for an Ontario election, the Trump tariffs may be used as an excuse to keep the Liberal government afloat. I mean, we're going to see a new Liberal prime minister in, a little over, a month and a half. And at that time, who knows what Prime Minister Freeland or Prime Minister Carney or Prime Minister Gould or whoever it is, what happened,
Come on, Karina Gould is not going to win. Not a chance.
They may make some overtures toward Jagmeet Singh and that he and his caucus can't refuse. And they might play the national government card, the kind of national emergency card, and say, look, we have to do something for these Trump tariffs. Hundreds of thousands of people have been thrown out of work. We need emergency supports like CERB from the pandemic, things like this. If you're Jagmeet Singh, you could say, I don't want to plunge Canada into further uncertainty. Of course, Pierre Poilievre is not going to be very happy about it, but I was speaking to some federal conservative folks today, and they were saying this is their fear, and this has been their fear for some time. They're not convinced that we're going to have an election before October. So and then with the new prime minister, who knows what the numbers change for the Liberals? They're probably done like dinner, but I don't know. Lots can happen.
This will go down as one of the most disgraceful acts of a government in Canadian history. The fact that we need an election and they are dragging out this nonsense, this complete abomination of a government, of a situation, not serving the best interests of Canadians. They haven't been doing it for years, and they're not doing it now. They know full well they should have called an election back in January 1st, and we would have already had the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre in power to deal with Donald Trump in that situation, a fresh 4-year mandate. Instead, they're running their stupid leadership race with all of these buffoons, none of which will be prime minister for more than a few weeks, unless this sneaking rat Jagmeet Singh keeps them in power. This madness just doesn't end here in Canada. It just seems every single day, it just one day longer, it does not end. There's definitely going to be light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know how long this tunnel is.